if getting patients out of a hospital faster is your metric, or your metric is treating the patient faster, feel like you're in the right space to be doing that. And that is one of the better use cases of AI in healthcare, right? Where it's truly in a life and death situation, and we're providing care to people who need it the most, which is exactly why we picked ICU over other sexier applications to do consumer and mental health and all those things. And then from a business growth perspective, it's, we've been fortunate where when we talk to hospitals, they see the need immediately. Neurologists are extremely overworked. There's a shortage of neurologists. There's a shortage of EEG technicians who read these things. And the ICUs are always full. They're overflowing with beds.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Kris Pahuja, who is the co-founder at Piramidal. My name is João Camargo. I am your host, and I am excited to have you here today, Kris. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, why don't we start off with you just telling everyone a little bit more about yourself, about your background, and also, of course, about Piramidal, any context that you'd like to share.
For sure. So I'm Kris. I'm one of the co-founders of Piramidal. We started Piramidal about 2 years ago. Dimitri's my co-founder. Dimitri's been working on this problem for understanding the brain and how we can unlock the brain for over 12 years. So when he came to me and, pitched it, saying this is what he's building, and if I'm interested to join him, I thought it was one of the coolest problems to work on. So what's Piramidal? Piramidal is a foundation model of the brain. So you can think about it as how EEG is a modality like text is, right? It's brain language. So same way you have ChatGPT, that's a foundation model trained on text, and it uncovers text. We're building a foundation model that's trained on brain language, which is EEG, which is brain data. What's super cool about it is you can fine tune this model the same way you can fine tune ChatGPT to do a bunch of cool things. And with our model, you can fine tune it for a bunch of applications. And where we're starting with is in the hospital to automate the diagnosis of neurological disorders for ICU patients. A little bit about me, like background wise. Previously, I worked for Google. Prior to Google, I worked for Spotify, all in product management. Been living in New York for a long time, and I've always kind of worked in product/business my entire career.
That's awesome. I first of all, one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have this talk, which I mentioned to you in our last conversation, is I am also a big health, neuroscience, whatever slot of information you want to dig into here, or sorry, whatever information slots you want to slot this under. That's me. I love talking about this stuff. And so some people may seem nerdy and all these things, but talk to me a little bit more about how Piramidal is able to analyze the brain waves to really give that clarity, or what does it give to then the providers, the physicians who are looking to improve their diagnosis or their process of treatment? How does that all go down on the back end?
For sure. So today, what happens is any patient in the ICU or a patient with a brain disorder, they hook them up to this thing called an EEG, which is electrodes all over your head, right? And doctors record this for minimum 24 hours, up to 48, 72 hours in a patient, and they see trends. But the way they do it today is they manually read through these brain waves that change 2,000 times a second across 20 channels, and they're looking at it manually and trying to identify what's going on. There are certain signals that are quite obvious, but there's a lot in the micro signals that you actually cannot see with a human eye. So our model is trained on the largest data source of EEG ever to exist. And it's fully understood end to end what an EEG looks like, how it works, how it spikes, how it communicates, without us telling it anything. And then we just give it some labels to fine tune the model to do certain tasks. So in the case of the doctors, we're like, well, these certain things you've seen, that's traumatic brain injury. And, certain, is that a problem?
You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
These certain things you've seen, that's traumatic brain injury. These other things that you've seen, they are, epileptic seizures. These other things you see in your memory, they are, alpha delta ratios that are. So then the model goes back to its entire memory, and it looks at everything it's ever seen, and then is able to identify these things, and then it just tells the doctor what's happening. So the doctor is um like, okay, so all the patients are on an EEG at any given point in time.
Yeah.
They are being analyzed by our model
Mhm.
simultaneously, whereas a doctor normally would have to go one by one.
Yeah, of
All
course.
the doctor has to do is click on a particular patient, and they see their EEG come up. A full analysis is what's happening, and they can almost chat and see what's going on.
That's so interesting. And it sounds to me like there's that portion of
You can mute this, by the way.
you're all good. No stress. No stress. I appreciate you. Yeah. It sounds to me like there's part of the back end where the doctor can very often find these patterns that are very reoccurring in however many brain wavelengths that they're always reading all the time, like the most common ones. But where Pyramidal also allows them to come in and facilitate that process, it also looks for the minor wavelengths that is not visible to the naked eye. And I'm interested to hear what exactly is it looking for in those minor wavelengths, and what does that tell us when we're able to identify those things?
So a lot of the activity that happens in the brain, it happens in the micro scale, right? And these things lead to bigger activity over time.
Mhm.
And the model can see the same activity that's about to come because it's looked at 1 million hours of EEG, and it knows that these often propagate to X, but we cannot see them, but it realizes it. So it'll tell a doctor this patient is likely to have a status epileptic attack at some point. And so the doctor can treat the patient more proactively. And also, things that happen over time, like for example, over 72 hours, the models
Mhm.
building that trend analysis, right? That you as a human, it's very hard to see
Yeah.
by looking at an EEG.
Mhm. When it comes to the implementation, thank you for sharing that. That's so interesting. I think pattern recognition is so important, and as people were like, oh yeah, I'm able to see these patterns, but we can sometimes even miss them, even if they are very common. So it's great that there is. It sounds really cool that there's something that is never going to miss these things, even in the minor, the smallest of scales. And
Please, yeah, I'll add one more thing. It's not just recognition, right? It's almost impossible. I mean, if you think about it, like, can a human go through 72 hours of data?
yeah.
Like, and look at things that are like waves, right?
Mm,
Let alone the micro scales. Like,
yeah.
forget that. It's even, can they, like, then it just, and there's a lot of questions between urologists, like, what's what? It's kind of like, you ask 3 doctors what the diagnosis, and they will give you a different answer, but you
Yeah.
put it in ChatGPT, and it'll go through every paper ever and give you highest probability across people. This is
Yeah.
this. So that's kind of where it sits. It's in that layer of also bringing consensus into
Mm. Yeah, that's cool because it not only takes away the time, it takes away the confusion, but also I think this is with anything, as you're analyzing a specific um project, whatever might be in front of you, there's always questions that happen in the back of your mind, like, oh, is it actually this? There's all these things. So it's like, again, just time and effort and I guess mental resources that go into this thing that doesn't have to happen anymore because boom, it just takes care of it by itself. That's awesome. And how does that get implemented into a hospital, a clinic, any of these places to which they can start utilizing it in the most efficient way?
Yeah, it's so we normally at the moment we only sell to ICUs because that's where the need is the most pressing.
Mhm.
Think of it this way: in the ICU, patients have to be recorded on EEG at least 24 hours. Now, most of the patients in the ICU are getting their EEGs done, but the doctor's looking at it twice a day at most.
Mm,
So, if the patient could be getting a really bad, almost attack that'll put them in coma in the afternoon, and the doctor's going to look at it in the night, it's too late.
mm,
So we fit our model on the cloud on top of all the EEG machines. All the data streams into our model, and our model analyzes all that data in real time and builds inference in real time. The second it sees an event that is alarming, it would notify the doctor immediately saying, this is what's happening. Here's what I'm seeing. The doctor will be like, oh, pretty bad, calls the nurse, and it's like, go treat the patient.
mhm.
Or, okay, it's bad, but I can delay it for. So the diagnosis itself of what to do, the doctor decides. Oh, we give them all the information to make the treat command.
Interesting. And regardless of what happens on the final decision, the process is still just like pretty much like a plug and play, since it's on the cloud. It feeds all the correct information that's needed to make the decision, and then the final call is, of course, on the professionals themselves.
Exactly. Like we give them a dashboard of every, normally they would look at all these things and they would make a report, which is that
Mhm.
A, B, C, D, E, F, right? So we
Yeah.
would get them A, B, C, D, E, F automatically to have all that information to make a decision.
Interesting. And how does that notification usually come through? Is it like, is it cloud based through their software that they use, or is it like getting them on a call? Hey, take care of this patient here. Like, how does that go down?
Yeah, it's a ping on their phone, where they can pull up what's going on. But if
Mhm.
you want to see the actual waves and confirm what's happening, they have to pull up their laptop and look at it in detail. But they get notifications saying, "Oh, patient's going into status epilepticus."
Mhm.
Alarming enough for a doctor to stop whatever they're doing.
Of course,
Yeah.
and pay attention to that. That's awesome. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about as well, Kris. Through the process of now building the company, there's many things that you mentioned to me in our first conversation. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about I'll call it the early stages that you guys are still in under, and the things that you're striving towards to make sure that the company can grow into a place where you can have the impact that you want, but of course be a successful business as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, we're now a team of 8 people. So Dimitri is CEO, I am Chief Business Officer. Um, and we've kind of split our roles in that way as well. Like Dimitri, is a PhD in machine learning and AI and neuroscience, and is really deep in the field. That the brains behind how this thing works. And my role is to take this in front of customers, but also build the front end of the product or figure out what different applications we want to use for the product.
Yeah.
So that's how we separate the company under two umbrellas. And then within, in general, from an impact perspective, one of the big reasons we wanted to do this is because it's truly saving lives, or truly has the potential to save lives.
Hmm.
And, if getting patients out of a hospital faster is your metric, or your metric is treating the patient faster,
Hmm.
feel like you're in the right space to be doing that. And that is one of the better use cases of AI in healthcare, right? It's
Yeah.
not where it's truly in a life and death situation, and we're providing care to people who need it the most, which is exactly why we picked ICU over other sexier applications to do consumer and
Sure.
mental health and all those things. And then from a business growth perspective, it's, we've been fortunate, or when we talk to hospitals, they see the need immediately.
Hmm.
Neurologists are extremely overworked. There's a shortage of neurologists. There's a shortage of EEG technicians who read these things.
Hmm.
And the ICUs are always full. They're overflowing with beds. They're bringing beds from other hospitals.
Hmm.
So anything we can do to make their lives easier, so they're able to look at all the patients. They will look at the patients more accurately, because today they're not even looking at all the patients, let alone get every single event that's happening, what
Hmm.
they need to know about.
Yeah,
Uh,
and time urgency, etc.
exactly, and then like treat them a little bit faster. So that's helped us really get in front of hospitals a lot quicker.
And when it comes to like, if I was an investor, which I'm not, so don't take my advice here. Like everything that you say sounds extremely interesting, but also has that potential that like a good product market fit. There's a clear need for it. There's a clear impact that it would have, but also a clear on a business side of things, a clear product that can scale. I'll use that word. So if everything sounds so amazing here, what are some of the challenges on the backside of that aren't just the pretty front end that is kind of, I will use the word a hurdle or obstacles into keeping the company growing and getting into a steady growth state.
A lot of obstacles, right? So that's a good question. Because it's everyday things that we struggle with all the time.
Hmm.
Hospital sales cycles are extremely long, so we deal with that all the time. Where things are supposed to happen today, but they happen 4 months from now, 5 months from now, because
Yeah.
and it gets delayed week by week too. So you really don't know how much more it's going to get delayed. Um, Working with regulatory bodies like the FDA is not easy when you're doing something new. They're not built for software, let alone built for AI. Like even software, came after a recent change FDA made where FDA was built for medical devices. And then at some point, they started doing software as a medical device where
Mm,
they retrofitted what you had for medical devices into software. And now you have AI, but none of the reimbursements in a hospital apply to an AI product. It's counterintuitive.
mm,
It reimburses hospitals based on human labor. So if a human is doing less work, they'll get less reimbursement. That's a little bit of a challenge.
mhm,
Um, you know, and just dealing with those bodies. In general, working with an AI model, hallucination is a problem. Making sure the model is doing everything it's doing all the time because there's no more care in the hospital is scary and it's a problem. So on every front you can imagine, we're facing challenges every single day.
And it's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds it's like the every single because you've worked with so many other companies as well. Every single new project, new startup, new thing that is being worked on has like, oh, this is so amazing, and then there's the incredible iceberg under it that people don't see. So I always love to hear like that side of things as well. And what are some of the things that um you think are ways that you guys are able to overcome some of these obstacles to allow the company to get to that growth stage, possibly acquiring some funding, whatever that's that path might be for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, we deal with a lot of those problems today by keeping our goal in mind for our next round. So with our existing investors, we have pretty set goals of where we want to get to in the next year to raise our Series A.
Hmm.
And a lot of the metrics, we've predefined just like, well, these are challenges, and as long as we overcome them, we are there where we need to get to, regardless of what happens in the back end to get there. Like
Yeah.
how we build a machine, right? It's like any startup. Like when we were in Y Combinator, we would hear stories from the founders of DoorDash or Airbnb and others.
Mm.
You realize that all the way until IPO, it's like gluing things together to make and that's exactly where we are. Whereas once we get to Series A, our goal will be maybe get into 50 hospitals, and then we'll glue it together to get there how we need to get there, while putting
Mhm.
processes in place,
Mhm.
obviously having better operational structure.
Mhm.
But I think the challenges would be different then, but there'll still be all sorts of challenges that we'll have to.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's awesome. And I'd love to hear as well from your experiences with working with Google, Spotify, other companies as well. What are some of the things that you've learned throughout your journey there that is shaping or I guess helping you with how you're approaching things now with Pyramidal?
Yeah, for sure. So I did a startup before, when I just graduated college,
Mm.
and it didn't go as well. But it was a great experience. But what I learned working in big tech is, just hygiene of working a
Mm.
little bit, in the sense that, well, how do you build products? Like, what is, the standard way of building a good product? Like, if I wouldn't have worked at Spotify and Google that are churning out amazing products,
Mhm.
I would figure it out, but I wouldn't have had the front seat experience of the process they went through. So that process I already mapped in my mind of
Mhm.
how would we want to build a great product that, not everyone is building, for example.
Mhm.
And it's a big problem in healthcare. Products are built by doctors who don't think from the customer perspective, and they're unusable.
Yeah. Mhm. What do you mean by hygiene of product? It's just like the clarity on how you build it, how easily it functions, like things like that. Or what's the? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think it's more, the operational processes in place to make things happen.
Mm.
Like first time we went through it, it's like everything was random. It's like every day, like just let's just work on this for the sake of working on this kind of thing because you don't know any better. But then you really realize, okay, well, how do we templatize things? How do we spend more time upfront on organizing ourselves? What are the different processes that need to be in place and putting a good product together, good
Mhm.
CM strategy together? And having done it before, obviously doing something again is much easier than doing it for the first time. So yeah.
Yeah. 100%. That makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's an interesting one because when you first said that, the first thought that comes to me is like, okay, efficiency in the actual delivery, the delivery mechanism of it. But it sounds like it's not just the delivery; it's the execution behind that allows the delivery to happen in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The execution piece is super key.
Mm.
And if that's I think one of the biggest learnings of these places, because you'll come up with something, you're working in a product role, you have to put it out. and you need to make it happen. So it gives you that baseline of how to get
Mhm.
like, products like this done.
Awesome. Very cool. I have a couple final questions here for you, Kris. One of them is a question that I've been asking everybody, but I'm actually going to give it a little bit of a different pre-frame for you, just because of what you mentioned and how I guess the roles have been split up um, with yourself and your co-founder. So, looking at it through your lens, where you're working through the business development, chief business officer, making sure that things are actually moving in the way that they have to. If you had a magic wand and you could just wave this great, amazing wand and it could just solve one thing in the company, something you can control. Sure, like $1 billion of funding would be helpful. That's kind of sometimes outside of your control. So something you can control, a challenge, an obstacle, something that would allow your goals, your targets to just be achieved like that. What's the one thing that you would like to solve within the company?
If there's one thing we could solve, I think it would be like if I could like snap my finger and have a product that exactly is doing like, that's in my head as like the perfect product that
Mm,
fits the workflow almost 100% of the doctors.
mhm,
That's what I would want, only for the reason that we know like product market fit is there, like we identified it. We know where it fits in it. But as you build any product, you have this 1,000 feature list and you start with your P0s and you're like, well, we'll get that later. We'll get that later. Everyone's like, what about that?
mhm,
Things are breaking. Like if you could get that perfect piece
mhm.
together that just slots in their workflow perfectly to get them done, then I feel like we would open the floodgates for sale.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting. Do you think there's anything that stops, or of course there's many things, or else you wouldn't be telling me this thing. That's the answer. But what are some of the key things that is stopping that amazing product to happen, to actually go down? Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have early customers, right? We're partnered with the biggest hospital institutions, but they are still early customers. So two
Yep.
things that stop us are, one, recruitment. It's more challenging than we had initially thought.
Mm,
And like getting the right people to be able to build everything perfectly, it takes time. Like I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it takes a long time to get the right people on board. And
mhm,
then the other thing is, you want to be able to iterate those products with your key customers and get feedback and put more features out there. So like we have 2 or 3 customers who we're working with now, 4 others want the product, but we tell them to hold on because we're still iterating with these guys so we could put something in front of them.
mhm,
But if all this wasn't a thing, we could give it to all 5 or 6 and raise a much larger Series A. But obviously, we know we need to go through the steps of having more engineers to build the features and understand
mhm.
more of the features that they need um, to get there. Yeah,
Interesting. That's cool. And then it sounds like it's also just being able to show that value. I don't know. I'm so doing quotations here. Is actually show the value to these possible partners that would also allow then the back end more funding and then more growth from there that happens as well.
exactly,
Awesome.
exactly.
Cool. And then final question that I have here for you, Kris. It's actually not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were. So, are you ready for the question? Here.
Sure, absolutely.
What is the best hire you've ever made and why?
Ever made?
Ever. So it doesn't have to be now, it can be before and any all time.
Um, this is a tricky one because I don't. Yeah. I mean, I think right now, currently, the 2 hires, I would say two
Okay.
hires that we have in the company, like, and we recently made them on the non-tech side,
Mm,
are probably two of the best hires I've made. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. One, every hire I made prior to this, less at like working at Google and Spotify, it was less at stake, and it was like, well, we're checking a box to like fill a particular small problem.
mm,
So you're looking at a very specific skill set. But now the hires are a lot more generalist. Like, okay, now you work on regulatory and you work on like product, and then we'll swap you guys after.
mhm,
Getting that generalist skill set, but someone to be coming on board and then moving at the speed of light because we're just moving super fast. I've been very impressed by both of them. And it
mhm,
was, we did this interview process. We only had funding to hire one.
mm.
But then 2 guys were extremely impressive, and we're like, we just can't let it go. So we got both of them. Full Martin. And it's the point where one of them uprooted his entire life and moved here to Paris. Well, I'm like, I'm in Paris, and I have to be for visa reasons for my co-founder and all that. And he's like, you know what? I'll come work from there. And we're working from here. We're in the office right now at 9 p.m. in the night. He's still here. So, can't ask for more.
That's cool. And then when it comes, what you mentioned that they're non-technical roles. What are their roles, if you don't mind sharing?
Uh, yeah, I mean, they're both, similar. Your generalist, ops, regulatory, strategy, product, whatever you want to call them.
Getting shit done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, both come from consulting / product background. So, yeah.
A lot of context there. Awesome. Kris, thank you so much for your time here. This has been such an incredible conversation. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you, but of course, a little bit more about Pyramidal as well?
For sure. They can go to our website. There's not a lot of information on it, but we were featured on TechCrunch and VentureBeat, and those were pretty in detail publications on what we've done thus far. We have a few more publications coming, so stay tuned on some big things that are happening on our end. And then anyone should be happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and happy to chat more about it.
Amazing. Everyone, I will, of course, be leaving links down below here if you want to check them out. If you're still listening up until this point and you enjoyed listening to this conversation and you want to hear more conversations like this, please subscribe. And until the next episode, I will see you then. Thank you so much, Kris. I appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you.